Although Trump left office 3 weeks ago, we may not have seen the last of him yet. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows revealed Trump plans to stay in the arena. Meadows said in a radio interview with former White House advisor Sebastian Gorka that the president will continue to put the country first. He said Americans and 75 million voters are not done with Donald Trump and all he did for the country. Meadows added that he spoke to the former president on Wednesday and Thursday. And in her first public move, former First-Lady Melania Trump is creating her own private office, following in her husband's footsteps. The office will likely be located in the Trump's new home, Mar-A-Largo in Palm Beach, Florida. She opened her official Twitter account and made her first post. Last month, President Trump also opened his own post-presidential office. It's unclear yet how exactly she will use her office or Twitter account. Raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour may seem like a good idea. Some have argued it will make employees more productive and allow owners to retain talented workers. But where there are some unintended consequences. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the details.
To labor groups and others as well.
There are some big shots in Washington who want to raise the minimum wage for the whole country. It might sound like a noble cause because, let's face it, who doesn't want to make more money? But how is it going to affect people in small-town America and families? We spoke with Rachel Gressler at the Heritage Foundation about the rural-urban divide in this one-size-fits-all policy.
Well, I think that it's going to be people and families that live in low-cost areas. You know, the reality is that $15 per hour in Mississippi is like $36 per hour in Washington, D.C., where these policymakers are attempting to impose a nationwide federal minimum across the entire U.S. And so I think while it will certainly boost the incomes of some lower wage workers, it's actually going to come back and end up hurting the people that these lawmakers are trying to help the most.
The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office did a study on this very issue. They found that raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025 will give 27 million workers a raise and lift 900,000 Americans out of poverty. But Gressler says as the price of labor goes up, so does the cost of childcare.
And so when you look at the wages of childcare workers, who at median right now are about $11.65 an hour, this would result in a very significant cost increase for those providers. And I estimate that you would have to increase their costs by 21% on average across the United States. That would translate into an extra $3,728 for a family with 2 children.
And that same study said over the next 4 years, the move would cause 1.4 million Americans to have to hear, "You're fired." And who wants to hear that? What's more, Gressler points out that some workers just aren't that productive to warrant that type of salary.
And the reality is at $15 per hour, that's equivalent to $36,000 per year for the employer's costs. There are a lot of people, especially when they first start out in the labor market, who aren't able to produce that much in value, at least not yet. They need some experience and additional education. And what we're doing here is essentially pricing out certain people from the labor force.
But the debate on this still rages on, so we'll let you mull it over. Democrats are preparing to pass the minimum wage increase inside of Biden's monster relief package. A technicality would allow them to pass it quickly and without Republican support. But moderate Democrat Senator Kristen Sinema has all but put the kibosh on that idea by opposing it. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Now, concerned experts say Biden's recent order on deportations is strangling an ICE operation that targets sex offenders. We hear from an immigration policy expert on the potential impacts of that policy and how it could play out over time. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more.
A nationwide ICE operation to target and deport convicted sex offenders now blocked by Biden's new deportation directive. U.S. Marshals Service and ICE confirm they are reevaluating enforcement operations on sex offenders. That includes child molesters.
ICE knew where they were last week, and they were prepared to act. Now that things have been put on hold, they're either going to commit more crimes or they're going to relocate somewhere else within the interior of the country, and it'll take years, if ever, for immigration enforcement officials to identify these removable aliens.
Canceling ICE's Operation Talion has had immediate effects. Immigration policy expert Jessica Vaughn writes that an ICE officer told her More than 24 deportable sex offender targets in his area will be free to reoffend.
Again, it hampers ICE's ability to do their job. It's baffling and it's dangerous, and the consequences will be real and they will be severe. And the Biden administration is going to have to take ownership over all of the heinous crimes that will occur in the intervening time.
And to assess the impact of Biden's order, Jessica Vaughn took a look at 2018 records of all aliens removed by ICE. Here's what she found. In 2018, ICE removed more than 95,000 aliens. Vaughn writes that if Biden's order were to have been applied then, only about 3,000 or 3.5% of those illegal immigrants would have been deported. And it's expected that this new order will have unprecedented impacts in the years to come. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The canceled Keystone Pipeline was years in the making, with many in South Dakota invested in the project. One company helped bring electricity to the pipeline. NTD's Don Tran talked to that business about how Biden's decision is affecting them and their community.
At a South Dakota electric company, a huge amount of capital has been put on hold. The company has around $14 million worth of equipment. It's all waiting to be put to use.
I'm here at West Central Electric Cooperative's warehouse, and behind me are two sub-transition transformers. Each of them cost $750,000 and have been sitting here since 2013. They were actually scheduled to be sent to one of the oil pump stations to provide more power, but after President Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline's construction, it looks like these two will have to sit back a while longer.
West Central has worked on the Keystone Pipeline since the beginning in 2008, but then one of Biden's first-day executive orders put a stop to their work.
We put a lot of time into it, which, they paid for, but it sure helped us here at the co-op. So yeah, it's a little disappointing to see something like that pulled away with a swipe of a pen and 10 minutes after it's sworn in or whatever, but, I guess it's the way it works in Washington these days. So.
The company wasn't spared of any losses either. Jeff Berklin, the CEO of West Central Electric, is in charge of over 3,000 employees, and they cover over 7,000 square miles of land. He hoped for their work on the pipeline to bring more revenue to deal with the high electricity rates.
What it means to us, had we been able to fulfill our contract and move forward with that power, roughly our members, West Central Electric, we're out $90 million. That's what that means to us.
It also would have given $4 million in state sales tax revenue. For Berklin, the pipeline seemed like the only opportunity to help his members grow, but he's still hopeful for future prospects.
I have to be optimistic. No is not an answer. That's not how I was raised. You got a problem, you got to find a solution. We got to work together. There's give and take on both sides, and that's how our country was founded.
Berklin added he understands people's concerns about why the pipeline shouldn't be built, but he thinks stopping the project altogether is not the best solution. Reporting in South Dakota, Don Tran, NTD News.
We have new updates on the horrific accident in Texas. The death toll has sadly risen, and we learn more about what happened. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to a fire department volunteer who went to the scene.
We've all seen the horrifying images of the 133-car pileup on Texas's icy interstate road, the wreckage spanning over a mile. As of now, officials say at least 6 people were killed. A count from CNN reports 9 deaths. 65 people had to be treated at the hospital for their injuries from the accident.
Never anything like this. This is really unheard of since I've been living in this area, to see a pileup in Fort Worth of this magnitude.
Daniel Enriquez worked with the fire department for over 20 years and went to the scene after the accident. He describes the harrowing scene.
You couldn't even tell it was a pickup truck. I was just crying right there because it was just such a terrible image, just to know that whoever was in there, they didn't make it.
There were many large trucks involved in the accident. Enriquez tells us what he heard from those at the site.
An 18-wheeler actually hit it was like a pickup truck or something so hard that the pickup truck went airborne. These 18-wheelers, they really can't stop, and then when you have to stop on a dime, it's going to keep going. It's going to plow into everything in front of them.
An account told Enriquez some cars were driving very fast despite the bad weather conditions. Some say up to 60 miles per hour. He notes it's crucial for cars to keep enough space between big trucks. Enriquez mentioned two factors he thinks contributed to the accident. First, he didn't see any sand on the roads. Typically in inclement weather, roads are sanded the night before or latest morning of to prevent skidding. Second, the express lane was not closed.
Express lane was left open, and that's a big no-no for this kind of weather. That and the sand not being on the ground contributed a lot to the catastrophe that we had.
The express lanes are normally closed during bad weather. If an accident happens, the lane is left so police and emergency responders have a clear path to quickly reach the scene. Enriquez spoke to a police officer on this issue.
And they told me that in their meetings, they were really surprised why were the express lanes open during that time. They should have been closed where nobody drives on it during icy weather.
Enriquez hopes we can learn from this tragedy. Remember to drive slowly, leave space between large trucks, and in bad weather, close express lanes and sand roads beforehand. Reporting by Christina Kim, NTD News.
An interview with rapper and songwriter Pitbull, whose family fled communism, is going viral. In it, he warns how quickly freedom can be taken away, especially in times of crisis. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Rapper and songwriter Pitbull calls himself Mr. Worldwide. He's performed all over the world and has #1 hits in more than 15 countries. But there's one country he refuses to perform in: Cuba. He says he won't perform there until the country and its people are free. Pitbull's a first-generation Cuban-American. His family escaped communism under the rule of Fidel Castro. And now he's warning about communism in the United States. A video of him from last year is going viral as people take heed of his message. In the interview on Revolt TV, he compared strict lockdown measures and big tech's control over pandemic-related information to communist dictatorships.
I have this conversation because my family comes from communism. They fled communism. They had everything taken away from them. Everybody got murdered. Everybody got killed.
The rapper said he thinks Castro would be envious if he saw what's happening all over the world.
It's Castro. He's going, y'all did it with a virus? Y'all took over the world with a virus? Y'all gotta be kidding me.
Pitbull says these things smell like communism to him, namely big tech censorship and crackdown on unapproved info. The rapper expressed how much he appreciates freedom and opportunity since his family fled a murderous regime. He encouraged people to educate themselves and wake up. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
President Biden is saying that an important part of his China strategy is working with European allies. But what do the European leaders think about this? NTD's Penny Joe has more.
Ever since his election campaign, President Biden has been saying his China strategy is working with other democratic allies like the European Union.
The way China will respond is when we gather the rest of the world. That's when things begin to change. That's when China's behavior is going to change.
When asked about how the administration plans to counter the Chinese regime, the White House repeated,
working with our partners and allies, and in all of the conversations with Europeans, with allies in the region, China and the relationship with China has been a pivotal part of those conversations. So that's also part of our strategy. And then also,
can President Biden work with Europe to counter the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP? Earlier this month, French President Emmanuel Macron told an American think tank that the European Union should not gang up on China with the U.S.
For me, we have two different scenarios which are to be excluded. Number one would be a scenario where we put in a situation to join all together against China. This one, for me, is counterproductive because it will push China to increase its regional strategy. It will push China to precisely diminish its cooperation on the different agenda. And I think this is detrimental to all of us.
The French president says the EU will speak out about the CCP's human rights issues, but will also work with the regime in terms of trade and climate change. Another European leader, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, criticized last month the CCP's lack of transparency at the start of the pandemic, but she added that she agrees with CCP leader Xi Jinping there should not be a Cold War between the West and China.
The Chinese president spoke yesterday, and he and I agree on that. We see a need for multilateralism.
As Merkel prepares to step down this year, it remains to be seen whether the country's next leader will continue Merkel's China policy. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Hi there. A quick update. Social media has some new restrictions which might affect your access to our channel. If you want to stay tuned, make sure you visit us directly at ntd.com. We'll also have a newsletter coming out soon, and you can sign up for that now, so stay in touch. Thanks for watching.